Something incredibly painful for men married to dismissive-avoidant wives is how low of a priority they feel in their marriage. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com. Your dismissive-avoidant wife chooses everything before you, and it triggers your anxiety. You see this all the time with how busy she is. She's exhausted. She has a lot on her plate. Kids, career, schedules, responsibilities, commitments. And if you look at it at face value, it makes sense. Here's the thing, though. What you're noticing is you are not on that list of priorities. And something just doesn't add up. That she's busy, but you're also noticing she has time for maybe some hobbies. She has time for doom scrolling on the phone. And if you mention anything about this, you get the answer, I'm dealing with the kids, I work a full-time job. And so immediately you're thinking, well, yeah, she does have a lot on her plate. But it's not that she's busy. It's just that you're noticing that everything else gets priority over you. And I'm not talking about sometimes. I'm talking a continuous pattern year after year. The message that you're telling yourself is there's room for everyone and everything except for me. This is dissociation. This is what is happening inside the dismissive-avoidant woman's nervous system. Dissociation becomes their default. It's why kids and career become a safe substitute for intimacy. And this dynamic inevitably turns an anxious-preoccupied husband into a self-abandoning version of himself. Because this dissociation, it's a core survival strategy for your wife. It has to do with that inner wound that she has. Dismissive avoidance, it's not primarily about independence per se, but it's disconnection. And it's disconnection from vulnerability. It's disconnection from emotions. It's disconnection from bodily sensations where you feel. It causes disconnection in your relationships. She can disconnect from that relational dependence. That's part of that independence. The way that disconnection is maintained is through dissociation. Dissociation is staying out of the body. Remember, the body is somatic. The body is where we feel. As the anxious, preoccupied husband, this is where you operate. You're operating in the feeling stage. That's why you feel anxious. That's why you feel tightness in your chest. You feel the pit of your stomach. You feel this because you're in your body. When a dismissive avoidant is dissociated, she's out of her body. What she's trying to do is she's also trying to remain in control. Because for the dismissive avoidant wife, being present in her body, that's dangerous. That's where feelings live. That's where vulnerability is. That's where longing and attachment is. And it's because her nervous system from when she was a small child learned very early to stay busy, stay focused, stay productive, just don't feel. This is why different things in her life become tools of avoidance. And this is so confusing for husbands because we think all of these things that she prioritizes, they're good things. Kids, work, hobbies, fitness, whatever. Because these things are praised, the avoidance, it disappears in plain sight. It hides right there in front of you because no one's going to question the mom who's always with her kids. I mean, no one's going to challenge the woman who pours herself into her work. And who's going to criticize a wife who's so busy? But the truth is, dismissive avoidant women need something, anything to fixate on so they don't have to feel. Because fixation keeps the nervous system regulated, keeps intimacy at a distance, keeps you at a distance. That fixation keeps emotional exposure, vulnerability away. Kids become the ultimate dissociation tool. I mentioned that in one of the last podcasts. For the dismissive avoidant wife, their children become the safest place to put attachment energy because kids provide purpose without vulnerability. It's connection without reciprocity. And what I mean by that is like in a romantic relationship where you have an expectation of reciprocity. Children don't quite understand that. Now, they do feel that if there is not reciprocity, and that's for a whole nother podcast, but there's no intimacy involved in it. So you have love, but you don't have exposure. You don't have responsibility for a spouse. Children don't require this mutuality emotionally. And if she's pouring all of her attention into her children, they're most likely not begging her to be seen. They're not challenging her for her attention because usually she gives them plenty of attention. That attachment system that she has just locks onto them. Slowly, subtly, the marriage gets pushed off to the side. Romance pushed off to the side. Intimacy off to the margins. It's not malicious. She's not doing it intentionally, but structurally the nervous system of hers is prioritizing this feels safe. Intimacy does not feel safe. Kids feel safe. Work feels safe. Schedules feel safe. And you see where the hierarchy starts. And what happens if the husband brings this up? She says, the kids need me. Why are you making this about you? You don't understand how much I do. You don't understand all the things that I have to do in a day. And then you stop the conversation. Because every attempt to name that loneliness that you're trying to get across becomes another reason that she withdraws. And if kids aren't in the picture, something else is going to be. Career, projects, personal goals, fitness, anything that keeps her busy, that keeps her externally focused, keeps her in control. The dismissive nervous system does not tolerate stillness well because, again, stillness invites feelings, and feelings invite vulnerability. And vulnerability, remember, feels unsafe. That's that childhood wound that she has. She has to stay in motion. So how does that feel to you? She's regulating herself through busyness and distance. You're being kept at bay. You're being regulated through absence. And you feel it in your body first. You feel that tightening in your chest or that constant scanning for scraps of connection and affection and attention. Slowly, your nervous system starts asking, why don't I matter? Why am I the lowest priority here? Why do I feel alone even though I'm married? And that feeds the anxiety. That triggers the anxious-preoccupied core wound of not enough. Have to work hard and earn attention, affection, love. That anxious-preoccupied attachment wound inside. See, it's wired for connection, but when connection is inconsistent or deprioritized, the nervous system doesn't interpret that as she's busy. It interprets it as this is a threat. This distance, this means abandonment. Low priority, that's rejection. Busyness is disinterest. And so your nervous system activates. It's because your attachment bond feels at risk. Again, the anxious preoccupied at the core of their wound is the fear of abandonment. So how do you adapt? Most AP husbands, anxious preoccupied husbands, try harder. I've talked about this over and over. So when your wife prioritizes everything else, you help more. You lower your expectations. You become supportive. You help manage those logistics. Try not to trigger her. Because what's going through your head is if I don't add to her plate, if I don't add pressure, she'll relax. Well, I've talked about that before where it's like, don't pressure. Dismissives don't respond very well to pressure. So you're like, I won't add pressure. She'll relax. If I make things easier for her, she'll come back. She'll have room. She'll have space. If I'm patient, she will come back and see me. I think what is so painful in all of this is that your self-abandonment becomes the price of staying connected. And the longer this goes on, the more invisible you feel. This is why your anxiety increases the harder you try. The more you work to accommodate her busyness, you're abandoning your needs. Just to make this clear, I always say there is a role that every parent plays. So yes, you are doing things for your kids. Both parents play a role in the family. But if you are constantly abandoning your needs, your nervous system is going to register threat, because that connection that requires you to erase yourself, it's not safe. That anxiety inside of you ramps up, and you start overthinking and monitoring her mood, and you're waiting for signs, and you're doing all the chores, and you are doing everything around the house. You're very hypervigilant, replaying every single conversation in your mind, trying to map her out, trying to find that one little space, like you're trying to merge into traffic. You're trying to find that one little spot in her schedule, that one little spot between the kids and the career and everything else where you can merge in there and be a part of it. She feels that, not consciously, subconsciously, somatically. She feels your anxiety, and it feels like pressure to her nervous system, and so she distances more. The cycle goes around again. It's painful. She regulates through distance and disassociation, and you regulate through closeness and reassurance. When she distances and you move closer, then she distances more. The system is incompatible unless someone changes how they regulate. And this is where you have to manage your nervous system. This is where you have to learn how to manage your anxiety so that you are able to stay grounded in yourself. And it has nothing to do about talking. Talking to her about it rarely helps. If you try to talk to her about feeling deprioritized, she hears criticism. She hears expectation. She hears emotional demand. She's going to defend it. Again, I'm busy. This is just life. I can't just stop. The kids have all of this going. My job has requirements. I can't just not do these things. Nothing is ever good enough for you, is it? She's not working and parenting 24/7, but you leave the conversation feeling foolish for bringing it up. But your body feels that. Your body is reacting. And over time, that pattern does some real damage to your relationship because you stop feeling like a partner and you feel like a roommate. You start doubting yourself for wanting more. Now, what is the fix? It starts with awareness. I mean, you have to understand dissociation, and that helps you stop personalizing her choices. But awareness alone doesn't restore connection. But what it does give you is clarity. Clarity that this was never about you not being enough, because that's the story that you're telling yourself. That's what's driving you to try harder, to double down. I've got to work harder because I'm not enough. If I just try harder, then I can be enough. No, this has nothing to do with that. And that's where most AP men get stuck, trying harder. This is clarity that it was never about you not being enough. And it's clarity that you didn't fail the marriage by needing closeness. Connection is human. It's biological. We're wired for connection. And it gives you clarity that you've been adapting to emotional absence the only way you knew how. The way that you learned when you were 2 years old, 4 years old. So the shift doesn't start by demanding more. You have to take a different path. It starts by stopping self-abandonment. But now, this is not withdrawal. You're not sulking, going quiet to punish. This is self-respect. This is learning to soothe your nervous system and be able to manage your own anxiety. Because when you can manage your own anxiety and you see where you're in a relationship where one person dissociates and the other disappears, because that's not sustainable, you start to see where you can stay grounded in this situation. What does that mean? If you can stay grounded in this situation, then it gives you the opportunity to step back, notice what it is, and be able to love yourself, provide for yourself, give yourself self-love and self-compassion, so that what happens is you stop pressuring. Now, sometimes when you stop pressuring, that gives your wife some relief, and she starts coming closer to you. Sometimes when you stop pressuring, you start to see the relationship for what it really is, completely one-sided. And when that anxiety is under control, then what happens then is you can start making decisions not based from that anxiety and emotions, but from grounded, regulated thought. Is this a relationship that is good for me? Because as I said in the last podcast, no one deserves to be in a relationship where they're just tolerated. Because you've got all of this stuff stirring around, grief, sadness, anger. So when you can learn to soothe your anxiety, this is where you're able to start getting some clarity, and you can start realizing what boundaries you need to establish in this relationship. And I'll talk about boundaries in the next podcast as it relates to the dismissive-avoidant here as part of our month-long series. I've talked about boundaries before, but I want to talk about boundaries specifically with the dismissive. I just want you to get this idea of why, when you feel like you're such a low priority, that it's not because you are worthless. It's not because you are a failure as a husband. It is not because you are too much, that you're needy because you want connection. Now, I have mentioned before, sometimes that anxiety will lead anxious-preoccupied men to push things too far. And I see that sometimes with my guys, but most of the time, they're trying to keep it under control. As you can regulate your nervous system more, that's going to allow you to reclaim that self-leadership, that self-compassion, and you get clarity and you get regulation, and that gives you a place where you can calmly, not out of panic, but calmly decide what kind of life you're willing to live, with or without her participation. But for right now, just sit with this truth. You are not deprioritized because you were a bad husband. This is her wound. It has nothing to do with the fact that you need connection. You're not losing yourself because you want connection with your wife. You lost yourself because you're trying to stay connected in a relationship that requires your absence. Hopefully that brings some awareness to why you feel like such a low priority in your marriage. Hopefully this podcast was helpful. I'm going to continue with our month-long theme on the dismissive-avoidant wife because I see this pattern so much in the men that I work with and in my own marriage. If you are a new listener to this podcast, you're just finding us for the first time, would you hit that subscribe button? And the numbers for this podcast just keep growing. It's blowing me away, but there's not a lot of reviews. If you're one of those listeners that comes back episode after episode, because I see you in the analytics, would you give me a review? That helps other men find this for their own healing. Just take 60 seconds out and give one. I would really appreciate that. And if you need accountability, if you need someone to help you through this, I encourage you, reach out to me. SecureHusband.com, fill out that form for a free 30-minute consultation. No pressure, no sales pitch. Let's just have a conversation to see if one-on-one coaching can help keep you accountable in your marriage. And I'll see you on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.